Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Ambassador, you and I have had a good working relationship. We had a very good conversation in my office. We have worked together in particular concerning humanitarian crises and dissidents. I appreciated your willingness when serving as UN ambassador to speak out for Miriam Ibrahim, who was wrongfully imprisoned in Sudan and sentenced to torture and death for the crime of being a Christian. And you showed courage speaking out for her. As you know, I was very frustrated President Obama wouldn't speak out for her, but I was grateful that you did. But I also had very significant disagreements with you during your time as UN ambassador, and nowhere were those disagreements stronger than concerning Israel and concerning Iran. Concerning Israel, I think perhaps the most shameful moment of the Obama administration was after the election in November of 2016, and was the Security Council's passage of Resolution 2334, which I do not think it is coincidental that the Security Council passed it after the presidential election and not before. And that resolution was passed with, at best, the acquiescence of the United States and of you as UN ambassador, and at worst, the active encouragement of the Obama administration and you as UN ambassador. I believe Resolution 2334 is a pile of lies, that it is a resolution that is motivated by anti-Semitism, by hatred for Israel. Resolution 2334 declares much of modern-day Israel is illegitimate and illegally occupied territory. It declares the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem is illegitimate and illegally occupied territory. It declares the Wailing Wall is illegitimate and illegally occupied territory. There's a much circulated picture of President Obama in a yarmulke paying respects at the Wailing Wall. To see the Obama administration put through a resolution designed to attack Israel was quite dismaying. So I guess my first question is, do you agree with Resolution 2334?
Thank you, Senator. There were two sort of guiding principles that I relied upon as UN ambassador as it relates to Israel. The first was to combat bias and anti-Semitism and the unfair way that Israel has been treated at the UN and is treated at the UN. And the second, following President Obama's direction, of course, was to preserve space for a two-state solution. I want to make sure I have the chance to just describe a little bit what I did, and I'm disappointed we didn't get to talk about this in your office, what I did in the first category, because I think your question does not reflect the reality of my 4 years at the UN.
With respect, Ambassador Power, the time is limited.
Right.
And so if you could just answer the question I asked, do you agree with Resolution 2334? I recognize you may well have done other things that were positive concerning Israel. I'm focused on this action at the United Nations.
I just would like to get on the record that under my leadership, we secured Yom Kippur as a UN holiday. We convened the first ever General Assembly condemning anti-Semitism in the same chamber as the Zionism as Racism resolution was passed decades before. And we integrated Israel in a way that had never been done before, chairing committees, being able to actually be part of groups from which they had been traditionally excluded. I don't think there is a record that looks as substantial when it comes to integrating Israel. On the resolution itself, it is a resolution in keeping with President Obama's desire to encourage the parties to avoid unilateral steps, including terrorism, incitement to violence, and the building of settlements. Those dimensions of the resolution, I think if you read my explanation of vote at the time, the problem with the resolution and the reason President Obama decided to abstain was by and large the venue, because the UN has been so biased, because there are 18 General Assembly resolutions.
Let's get to a little bit more granularity.
Yeah.
Do you believe the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem is illegitimate and illegally occupied territory?
I do not.
So do you disagree with the substance of Resolution 2334? Because that's what it says.
Senator, President Obama's desire was to encourage the parties to avoid unilateral steps. That is the essence of that resolution, and I think the reason that he made the judgment to instruct me to abstain.
So encouraging the parties to avoid unilateral steps, Resolution 2334 was a unilateral step. Israel had no say in it. It was a step taken by the enemies of Israel to condemn Israel.
Again, the desire that animated me in my time at the UN was to fight bias and to preserve space for a two-state solution.
Okay, a final question. Can you please describe the role played by Iran and by the Houthis in particular in deepening the humanitarian crisis in Yemen, and assess whether the Biden administration's move to relieve terrorism sanctions on the Houthis has played a role in that humanitarian crisis?
The Houthi, when I was at the United Nations, the Houthi overran a sovereign government, used military force for territorial acquisition, have used food as a weapon of war. I mean, again, I'm on record condemning Houthi actions and specifically, again, the use of humanitarian aid. I think the challenge is the vast majority of Yemenis live under Houthi control at the moment, unless and until there is a political settlement. And so it's really important, given that that's the world's largest humanitarian catastrophe right now, that we find a way to get food to those vulnerable people.
Thank you very much.